Hello gems, this is episode 3 of 4 in the Make an Easy Live2D VTuber model in 1 week. Let's do a quick overview to recap on what we learned in episode 2. In the last episode, we downloaded Live2D Cubism, learned about how to set up your model and prepared it for rigging by creating deformers and by generating meshes, and now we finally get to jump into rigging, which is the best part. So one thing that we will want to do after you set up your meshes, set up all your deformers, is assign a texture atlas. So you can just do that by clicking this up here, and then I'm going to do 8192 by 8192. You can do whatever you want. You'll kind of see, you might have to cancel out and go back and try this. I'm just going to call it cat girl texture, and we'll click OK. You do want it to be large enough to fit everything on here. So if we select everything, you see how the scale says 79. Let's change that to 100. And the goal here is to space everything out evenly. You can tilt things any way in which you need to. We're not going to be able to fit everything on here. So basically what I'm going to do is just select the body and the head, and I have both of these selected. And then we're just going to do add texture, and I'll just do cat girl 2, click OK, and we can have them get moved over here. And for any new pieces that you may have added additionally, you'll see them listed over here, and you do want to make sure these are on the atlas or they won't show up. So they should show up in the corner, and move them out across the canvas. So I will let you go ahead and space all your pieces out. Remember this whole first page too, make sure none of the blue is overlapping, space every single piece out. Okay, and then after that you'll click OK, and then we can hop into rigging. Chapter 8 is rigging the eyes. Rigging is by far the most rewarding part of using Live2D Cubism. Watching your 2D art come to life is truly a magical thing to witness. I'll show you how to rig one whole eye, and then you can copy everything you've done on one side and apply the same principles to the other side. Let's start with rigging the iris. First, let's create a folder called eyes. For this iris, we'll be using the 𝐈𝐸𝐻 and 𝐈𝐸𝐻 parameters over here. This is fairly simple. Now select your iris you want to start rigging. I'll be doing her right iris and the highlight. Up here is where adding the keyframes is located. Let's drop 3 points by clicking this button. As I mentioned in episode 2, X goes across and Y goes up and down. Let's start with X for the right eye. We're selected on the iris right now. We're just going to select the highlight, and I'm also going to drop 3 points here as well. So if you can see, if I click something new, how the points aren't filled out because we didn't drop keyframes. So if you select something new, you'll need to add those keyframes. We're also actually going to do the same for the left eye. Click the left iris, drop 3 points. Click the left highlight, drop 3 points. Now I'm just going to click this iris, hold shift, click this one, click this iris, and this highlight. So now we have all selected at once so we can move them together. So now you're going to right click snap to this right point, hold shift on your keyboard, and move the eyes to the right. So now you can see they're moving over to the right. Now we'll right click snap to the middle, right click snap to the left, and then we'll hold shift again and drag them to look over to the left. So now you can see if we move our point, it should move them together back and forth. And now we're going to do the same type of thing for Y, but we're going up and down. So make sure before you start working on something else that you go back to your neutral point. So I'm going to right click to the middle dot. Again, you can just use the right clicks to snap directly onto the different points. Now we'll click on eyeball Y, and we're just going to do the same thing that we did earlier. Grab all these guys, and then we're going to drop our 3 points. Okay, and now once I have all these guys selected again, I'm going to snap to the right, and right is going to equal up for Y. So we're going to go upwards, and we'll deal with hiding those highlights as well. And then now we can see, okay, that looks good. We test move it, and now we'll right click snap to the left and then move this down. So let's see how that looks. Looking pretty good. Snap click back to the middle, and now I'm going to go back up to the right again, and something we can do is we'll just select both of these eye whites and we'll turn the opacity down to 0 for when it goes up. So basically when it's in the middle, as it starts going up, it kind of fades out. We'll see how that looks in the animation, and you can always kind of test to see what it looks like by going up to modeling, and once the physics settings is open, you can kind of drag the eyes around to see how that's looking. Okay, perfect. So we can X that out, make sure everything is linked back in the middle. Awesome. Okay, so next we will go ahead and click this little link button, click the top one, make sure your eyeball X is on top of your eyeball Y. You can move them around. You see that blue bar if for some reason they weren't, but click the link. You can unlink these at any time, even after you've already animated within here in the keyframes. So don't be afraid to unlink that if you needed to for whatever reason. And now as you can see, we don't have corners animated. We just have X and Y, but what about the corners? Make sure that everything is selected. So we're just going to go ahead and select all 4 again with the method we used earlier. Then click the hamburger menu and click synthesize corners. We're going to synthesize X and Y. Basically what this does is it's just a bunch of like mumbo jumbo math to be able to calculate what it's going to look like on these angles so you don't have to manually do each corner. It's a really helpful way to speed up the process. So we'll go ahead and click OK, and now you can see when I move these all around to the different angles, it's able to calculate the different pieces. And once again, we can go up to modeling physics settings and we can move it around to go ahead and test what it looks like. And there's our model being able to look all around. Great, so that's eyeball X and Y. Now for the eyes opening and closing. This can get a little tricky, so take your time with it and get it to look how you want. It doesn't have to be perfect, and chances are it won't be. The good news is since opening and closing your eyes is a pretty quick action, it doesn't need to be perfect. Now click on your eye are open, right click in the blank space, click edit parameter, and make sure the minimum is set to 0, default 1, max 1. And I'm going to do the same thing for the IL open, right click, edit parameter, 0, 1, click OK. We're going to add a point to 0.0, 0.3, 0.7, and 1.0. If you can't get this exact value, you can click the plus here and type it in and click OK and add them one by one like that. So we'll click OK. For the 1.0 and the 0.7, the eye will be totally open. And for 0.3, when we're moving more to the left, we'll do a halfway closed eye. And then 0 will be fully closed. This setup came from the rigger on X talking about the buffers concept. Basically, without a few stages of the eye closing, it would look a bit more jarring and not as smooth. There are many ways to rig all parts of a model, so always be on the lookout for new ways and what will work for your specific project. Let's just start with the half closed. So we're gonna go ahead and right click to the 0.3 dot here, the second from the one from the left. And we're just gonna start moving all these down. I'm gonna speed up the video a bit so you can see how I worked my way through this. Yours is gonna be unique and different to how your eye is set up. Once you start any of the other pieces, remember you do need to drop a keyframe on for it to change. So don't start changing it until you drop your keyframes. So we're gonna go ahead and right click to the 1.0 and you can just add a single keyframe like this, and we'll just go through each of them. So you can add it like this, and like I mentioned earlier, you can select multiple pieces. So since I know I'm also going to be controlling all these eyelashes, I'll select all of them at once, and then I'll right click on each point and drop the points again so we don't have to keep doing it over and over and over again. Right, and then we can right click, snap back to our half point, and start moving the rest of the pieces down. And you can see that I keep testing it to see how it's moving. So see how there's that gap there? I'm trying to get rid of that right now, but just moving the pieces a bit more over to see what I can do to fill that up while every piece is moving. So we can just kind of keep testing that until we get that to a point that we like. So I'm just gonna keep moving this eyelash down a little bit to see how that looks. And it looks like this one got a little too far in. So that looks pretty good now. I'm pretty happy with those side pieces. So now we'll just do these little lashes here. And you can use this box to kind of move it down too. You don't have to move everything with the worm tool if it's not necessary. And I'm just gonna go ahead and tilt this guy up a little bit more. So I like that. That looks pretty good. Now I didn't grab this highlight yet, so I am gonna go ahead and drop points for each of these ones and move that down as well. So now we'll snap to here and pull this down a bit. So that's moving pretty good. And now for the eye white, we'll select that as well. And again, remember, make sure your points are dropped, so always be glancing over to the right to make sure the keyframes are activated if you're going to move something. Okay, so I'm going to right click here. We're just going to pull this down a little bit, and then we're going to pull these little pieces in over here. Okay, let's see how that's looking. That's looking good to me. And now we'll snap to the left, and now we want to completely close the eye. So again, I'm going to go ahead and speed this part up as I start making it my way through. Alright, once that eyelash is down, we'll select our eye white and we'll just drag this until we can flatten it out. And I'll go ahead and move it up a little bit so it's kind of covered in there. Drag it even more so it's flattened out. And then we can even grab all these points and kind of pull them in to make sure none of that is showing. And you can see some of that white is pulling in a little too early there. So then what I'll usually do is I'll kind of go in and just pull down some of these pieces to see if we can fix that. Then we'll just... Okay, there's still a little bit over here. It's pulling in a little bit too. And that looks to be pretty good. I guess I do see some of this pulling in a little bit too. Let's go ahead and pull some of our pieces back out over here. All right, and that looks good. And something that I kept doing is if you see a middle point and you don't know where that point is, you can just click on it, it'll close, and then we can just move this up. So then that solves that problem. Okay, now we can do these pieces as well. I'm gonna just go ahead and drag this and kind of move it in, tilt it. These are the eyelashes being kind of closed. So we just wanna make this look as natural as we can with like what an eye looks like when it's closing with these eyelashes. You can get a mirror and look at yours for reference. I find that to be pretty helpful. Okay, so there it is. So there's open and close. Looks like we still have this little eye white. And what I like to do for the eye white is instead of crunching it down like everything else, we're just going to turn the opacity to 0 so that it kind of slowly fades out. I like that natural look. Again, it depends on what you want to do as the creator, the animator, right? Everyone's going to kind of have a different method. Like, how do you want that to disappear? You could crunch it, you can do an opacity shift, there's different ways that you can mess with it. Okay, and now we do that exact same thing, but for the other eye. And I'm just gonna let you pause the video and work on that now, and then we'll meet back here. Now we have both the eyes closing, which is amazing. We can just snap those back to the right and keep them open. And next we'll be rigging the eyebrows. Chapter 9 is rigging the eyebrows. Eyebrows are super important because they help make a character feel super expressive. Make a new folder called eyebrows. Drag all your different eyebrow parameters into the folder called eyebrows. Okay, so I'd forgotten to move the angle and the form brows into the folder, so I just moved all those as well. Again, you can move multiple things by clicking one and then holding shift and selecting it, and you drop into the folder, and you can open the folder by clicking the little folder button there. Okay, so for brow RY, we're gonna go ahead and drop 3 points, and then we're going to select the left one and make sure the parameter is also selected for left, drop 3. Now we can select both by holding shift, and then we're going to snap both of these guys to the right points and then go up. And then we're going to do the same for the snap to the left and then go down. So now you can see that they both are able to move up and down. And I'm just going to click away to reset for a second. I'm going to select the right brow again, drop 3 points for the brow RX, and we'll do the same for the left. Select the left brow, drop our 3 points. Now I can select both again, and for X it's going to be to the left and right, so let's snap these two to the right, move the brows over here, then snap to the left, right click, and move the brows over here. Okay, great, and then make sure to reset everything into the middle points there. Now for the brow angle, we're gonna go ahead and select the right one. Let's move this up. I'm just gonna keep the right on top of the left, so you can move those around. It just helps me kind of keep track of that. And then we'll go ahead and drop the 3 points, and to the right, this is gonna be a little tricky. We're gonna turn this eyebrow out this way. And now for left, let's select that one, click this eyebrow, drop our 3 points. To the right, we're not gonna do this way. We're gonna actually tilt it the opposite way. Okay, and then we're gonna snap both of these back to the left, and then we'll just do the opposite. We'll turn both of these inward. Mwahaha, she's got the evil look. All right, and then for brow form, this is probably the trickiest one. Let's just reset both of the angles to the middle. We're gonna select, again, let's make sure the right's on top. I'm just gonna click drag that. We're gonna select the right one. And for form, we'll drop 3 points. You can just click OK. And then we're gonna snap to the right here. We're just gonna move these points down slowly. The form is using our worm tool here to get that sort of sad angled brow look. Okay, and then we'll select this one as well and go to the brow L form, drop our 3 points, click OK again. Let's go ahead and slowly start dragging these guys down. And you kind of want to move these ones a bit slowly to avoid a ton of like wrinkles and stuff like that is usually what I do. That looks pretty good to me. And now let's snap both of these guys to the left here, and then we can just kind of do a more raised brow. Let's select this one. You can just zoom in. If the red box is ever in the way, just zoom in to be able to select that point. Okay, we can click off and see how that looks. Looks good to me. Okay, and then let's reset those back to the middle. Chapter 10 is rigging the mouth. Mouths can get pretty complicated, so for this tutorial, we'll have a simple open and close and a few versions for when you change expressions. We will have to go draw the new expression and then replace the .psd. Here are the extra parts I drew for my model for these expressions. You also have to fix fix the texture atlas and make sure your new pieces are in the atlas correctly. And you can do that by clicking on the texture atlas button, and as you see all the objects on the right side, you can double click to move them on to the atlas. Make sure to space them out evenly and you should be good to go. Create a new folder called mouth. Move the mouth open parameter into it. Select the tongue and drop 2 points. On the left point, change the opacity to 0. Do the same thing for each piece of your open mouth. Next, we want to make the closed mouth show up when we're on the left point. So you're going to right click snap to the left point, make sure it's at 100%, and then right click snap to the right point and we'll turn the opacity to 0. So now you can see that you have a nice transition between open mouth and the closed happy mouth. And we're going to do one more thing. We're going to double click on the blank space here. We're going to add a point at 0.9. So go ahead and type that in, click OK again. And we're going to do the same thing here. We want to make sure that the closed mouth is actually 100% on this one. And then we're going to turn everything else to 0% at this point. We are going to have to add a keyframe as well. So make sure you right click onto that, click add keyframe, and then we'll change this to 0 as well. Now the reason that we're doing this is so that there's no weird in between state when it's shifting between open and closed mouth. So we're just going to go ahead through each piece again. Let's select the teeth. We're going to right click, add a keyframe, turn this to 0. We're going to click on the tongue, right click there, add a keyframe, I'll turn it to 0, and then do the top mouth, same thing, add the keyframe, there we go, and then lastly the bottom part of the mouth. Add it and turn that to 0. And now we'll have our nice shift in between closed mouth and happy mouth. Chapter 11 is adding expressions. Now we can add our expressions. And the great thing is you can go in and add more expressions at any time. Let's start with the angry one first. So we're pretty much going to treat this like a light switch. Let's go ahead and select our angry mark. I'm going to turn the layer on. That way we can see it. Click on angry and drop 2 points. And to the right, we want it at 100% opacity. And to the left, we want it to 0 opacity. So it can fade in and out. And next we're going to do the angry closed mouth. We're just going to turn that on. And we're going to drop our 2 points here again. And we want angry closed to be at the left point. So then right click snap to the right and turn it to 0 opacity. And now turn on the angry open and we're going to drop 2 points again, back to the left point snap and click 0 opacity for that. So now we have the open and close. And I'm just going to turn the mouth off for a second so you can see the two we have. And we're going to want to add the 0.9 point again. So let's double click, go in 0.9, right click snap there. And remember, we want to turn this open mouth off. So let's click angry open and snap right click to the 0.9, and we're just going to turn the opacity to 0. And then let's go back to the angry closed. We're going to add a keyframe and turn this opacity here to 100. So now we have the same effect that we have for the mouth open. And now we're going to do the same thing for sad. So go ahead and right click, edit parameter heart eyes. We're just going to rename this sad, and remember to change the back end of param to the same exact name. And we'll click OK. I'm going to click drag and move this above, and then we're going to drop 2 points, and then let's double click, add our 0.9 in as well. Okay, and now that we have this ready for sad, we're going to turn on our tier. Let's go to the right, add keyframes to each piece. So just go ahead and click through them, and then to this one, the 0.9, let's turn the tier to 0, and same for the far left, turn it to 0. So we have the tier on, the tier off, and we want to do the same thing with the sad mouth. So sad open, we'll turn this on, go to the sad point, add our keyframes. We're just going to keep going through and adding those. Then snap to the right, then snap to the left, turn it to 0, snap to the 0.9 point, turn it to 0. And then we'll go back to 0.9, turn on the sad closed, add keyframes to each one. So we'll just go ahead and run through that. And on 0.9, we want to make sure it's at 100 opacity. Same for the far left at 100, but to the far right, make sure that opacity is going to be 0, so it's not overlapping with our open mouth. Okay. And last but not least is sparkle eyes. Okay, so for the sparkle eyes, the first thing we want to do is make sure they're turned on, of course. And let's go ahead and make sure that they are clipped to the art mesh. So click the right one first and make sure it's clipped to 𝐈𝐻𝐻𝐸. Check that box. Same for the left one, drop down and make sure 𝐈𝐻𝐿 is checked. We're going to click sparkle eyes. We're going to select both of our sparkle eyes, drop 2 points, snap to the left, and turn the opacity to 0. So this can turn them on and off. Okay. And next we're going to actually create one more expression. Let's click plus, and we'll call this off iris. So this is going to turn off our regular irises. Go ahead and paste that right after the param to make sure the IDs are linked as we've talked about earlier. Then we'll click on this and let's select all of these pieces. So we're going to go ahead and open the irises. Let's select both irises, click one, hold control, click the second one, and then both highlights. Let's make sure we're on this parameter, drop 2 points. You can just click OK on that notification, snap to the left and turn it to 0. Now we can turn those on and off, and I'm just going to keep them off for now. Now select both your sparkle eyes, and we're going to go ahead and actually move the left one in with the iris L here, and then we're going to move the right one in with the iris R. Now select both of these, remember to hold control to select each, drop our 3 points on the eyeball X, snap to the right, let's move these guys over, then to the left, move them over. So we kind of have our guide there. And then for Y, let's select that, drop our 3 points, snap to the right, go up, to the left, go down. Perfect. And then we can link these guys, burger menu, and synthesize corners. You know what to do. Now we should be able to fix the iris issue later if you see any opacity issues. We'll see if that sticks around once we start animating. If so, we'll have to make some changes. Next, we'll go to IR Open, and as you can see, there's an issue at the bottom of the iris. So we're going to fix this by selecting just our sparkle eye right. And let's go ahead and add keyframes to each of these guys. Click OK. Let's keep adding a few more. Go through. Okay, perfect. And then double click on the blank space, add a 0.05. Now this is specific for the eye sparkle, as we're going to do something sneaky here. When you click to the far left, turn the opacity to 0. So then it kind of hides it at the last second. We'll do the same with the left eye. So let's select the left sparkle, go through, right click and add our singular keyframes. Click plus, click plus, plus, and then double click here, add the 0.5 and turn that opacity to 0. So now we can hide those. Okay, so we can snap both our eyes back open. All right, nice job. Chapter 12 is breathing. This will make your model seem a bit more lively. First, we're actually gonna have to move all these pieces into the mouth deformer so that it's attached to the whole body. Next, click on body Y, drop 2 points, click on body warp over here in the deformers, add a keyframe, and to the right side, we'll right click snap and go ahead and move the body up a bit. We just grab these corners. You can also even like lift the shoulders out a bit to get a bit of a breathing feeling. Okay, great. And then save your work. And now in the final episode, we'll be learning how to use the animator to bring this all together and how to set everything up in VTube Studio and in OBS where you can stream. So far, you've done amazing. See you there.